In this demonstration, I will show you how to construct the bar chart, histogram, stacked bar chart, and scatter plot to visualize data. First, let's look at bar chart. The question that we are trying to explore in this example is that during a typical school week, how do you commute from home to school? Possible responses include drive alone, public transportation, bicycle, walk, and other. 600 people responded to the survey. So let's see how we can visualize this data set using the bar chart in R. Here in RStudio, I have imported the dataset Transit Survey into a data frame and labeled it My Data. I'm going to start a new R script. We can use the table function to first create a frequency distribution and label it frequency. And I'm going to show the frequency distribution table by typing in the name frequency. As you can see from the result displays a frequency distribution table, which shows that most people, 273 people, use the public transit, followed by 141 people who walk to school, and then followed by 111 people who bicycle to school. We can also use the view function to get a more attractive display of the frequency distribution table. Now let's create the bar plot. I'm going to use the bar plot function to construct a bar chart for this example. The bar plot function comes with many options for formatting. The first parameter we need to put into the bar plot function would be the frequency distribution table. And we are going to use the main option to add a title to the bar chart. We can use the X-label option to provide a label for the x-axis. In a bar chart, the x-axis shows the frequency. Therefore, we are going to plot the number of respondents in our x-axis in this bar chart. We are going to use the horizontal option to indicate a horizontal bar chart. Use the color option to indicate the color we want to display. Use the X-limit option to extend the horizontal axis units from 0 to 300. And use the less option equal to 1 to display the category names perpendicular to the y-axis. And finally, we are going to use the sex.names option to reduce the font size of the category names so that they are not truncated. When I run this line of code, my bar chart shows up here. As you can see, it has the x-axis for the number of respondents, and then the y-axis for all the different categories, and it uses the blue bar to show me the frequency distribution. Finally, we are going to use the AB line function to insert the y-axis. So as you can see, the bar chart clearly shows that the most common commuting mode is public transit. Walking and the bicycle are the distance second and third. Such information would be very useful to campus and public transit planners who want to optimize the design of campus and public transportation routes. Now let's look at how we can construct a histogram in R. In this example, we are going to construct a histogram for Fidelity's Value Mutual Fund from 1984 through 1918. Below is the data set, which shows the annual returns for the growth and the value mutual funds. In this example, we're only going to look at the value mutual fund. In RStudio, I have imported the growth value dataset into a data frame and labeled it My Data. We'll first define the intervals using the sequence function. The first argument in the function is the lower limit of the first interval. The next argument is the upper limit. And the last argument for the sequence function defines the width of each interval. So the lower limit of our first interval is -50. The upper limit is 100. And we are going to have a width of 25 for each interval. Then we are going to use the cut function with the left and the right options to ensure that the intervals are open on the left and closed on the right. We will now use the table function to create a frequency distribution labeled value.frequency. And display the frequency table by typing in the name value.frequency. As you can see from the result, the most frequent interval is the 0 to 25 interval, followed by -25 to 0. you can get a more attractive display of the frequency table by using the view function. Which shows you exactly the same information. Now we're going to use the hist function to construct a histogram. We first provided the data value for the histogram. Then we're going to define the breaks option using the intervals that we defined in the previous step. Again, we set the right option equal to true so that the intervals are right closed. And we provide a title for the histogram using the min function. Use the X label option to provide a label for the x-axis. And use the color option to provide a color. Now let's run this line of code. There you go, we have our histogram here. From the histogram, we can see that the range of annual returns for value mutual fund is between -50% and +50%. The most likely return is from 0 to 25%. We can also see from the histogram that the distribution of the returns of the value mutual fund is not symmetric. It's negatively skewed with a tail running off to the left. Now let's look at how we can create a stacked bar chart in R. In this example, we are going to create a stacked bar chart to explore the relationship between a customer's location and whether the customer makes a purchase. There are 600 cases in our dataset. In RStudio, I have imported the promotion data into a data frame and labeled it My Data. First, we need to create a contingency table. In order to create a contingency table, we are going to use the table function. I'm going to name the contingency table My Table. The table function requires two parameters. First, the row, and the second, the column. So the row of my table would be the location, and the column of my table would be whether the customer made a purchase. To display the contingency table, I'm going to type the name of the table. And run it. The result shows us the contingency table. So instead of showing me the raw number, I can also show the cell proportions in terms of the percentages using the prop.table function. As you can see from the result, now instead of showing the frequency, it's showing me proportion. Now to create a stacked column chart, we need to first create a contingency table with the purchase variable in rows and the location variable in columns. And we are going to use the bar plot function to construct a column chart. Since now we have two categorical variables here, we are going to use two different colors for these two variables. We're going to use both color blue and the red. We are also going to add a legend to our bar plot. The legend is going to include the row names of my new table. The label for the x-axis would be location. And the label for the y-axis would be count. And the range of y-axis will go from 0 to 200. Okay. Now let's run this line of code. There you go. Now we have a stacked bar chart here that shows us the locations of our customers, and then within each location, whether the customers made a purchase or not. As you can see, a large portion of the customers in the southern region made a purchase during the last promotion, whereas in the Midwest, a larger percentage of the customers did not make a purchase during the last promotion. Now let's look at how we can construct a scatter plot in R. In this example, we are going to compare the returns of the growth mutual fund and the value mutual fund. We want to find out if there is a relationship between the returns of Fidelity's growth mutual fund and those of the value mutual fund between 1984 and 2018. In RStudio, I have imported the dataset growth value into a data frame and labeled it my data. In order to construct a scatter plot, we use the plot function. First, we are going to provide the names of the two variables that we are going to plot. Start with the variable on the y-axis. Followed by tilde. Then the variable on the x-axis. And we are going to use the PCH option to specify the marker for the data points. In this case, we are going to choose number 16, which displays filled circles as data markers. Okay, now let's run this line of code. And this shows the scattered plot, which displays a relatively positive relationship between value and growth. And that means as the annual returns for value increases, the annual return for growth tends to increase as well.